You've been told if you keep your head down, work hard, and prove yourself, recognition, promotions, and opportunities will come. But let's be honest, that's just not true. This is Lead Without Limits, a podcast for professionals in multifamily and beyond who are ready to stop second-guessing themselves. Because leadership isn't just about titles or tactical skills. Yes, we'll cover those here, but real leadership starts from within. It's about changing the beliefs and behaviors that have kept you playing small and rewiring the thought patterns holding you back. I'm Shanenn Bryant, a confidence and pattern expert, and this is the space where we talk real growth, real change, and maybe have a little workday humor along the way. This episode is brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, delivering the latest news, ideas, and inspiration across the multifamily sector. If you're ready to lead without fear, lead without doubt, and lead without limits, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Well, welcome back to another episode of Lead Without Limits. I have Jennifer Thompson with me today. Her personal mission statement is to be a valuable presence wherever she goes, and she certainly has been that for me already. But when she falls short on her mission, she views those moments as opportunities to gain wisdom. Jennifer's committed to understanding the deeply complex and often very messy, I agree, very messy elements of human interaction. And you have a book dealing with trouble in the workplace, martyrs, victims, and jerks. That's what we're talking about today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shannon. It seems like everyone has a story about at least a martyr, a victim, or a jerk.
Oh my gosh. I think we've all dealt with, like you said, one of those three, all of those.
Or we became them.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that when we show up.
Did you hear about me? What's going on? You heard that?
The rumors are out, Shannon.
The rumors are true. I might have been one of those or all of those at some point.
No.
So.
Oh, tell me more now that you opened that can of worms, Shannon.
This is your interview, Jennifer, not mine. We're talking to you.
I'm looking for stories for the next book, Shannon. And you know what? Unfortunately, there are so many stories out there. And I kind of think that the book wrote itself in that I've been accumulating these stories over the years. And what I found is there's a lot of people suffering in the workplace. Unfortunately, I had so many stories that I had to censor which ones to include. That's how many people have shared with me that they're suffering.
Yeah. I mean, being in the corporate world in my previous life, you didn't talk to someone really about any other topic. I felt like you talk, maybe about your projects, but it's usually the difficulty or someone who's being difficult on a project or assignment. So I think this definitely comes up a lot. Why do you think it's so prevalent in the workplace?
Two things. And I think about that a lot. I think about with COVID, we had this conflation of we're no longer just employee and then person at home. They kind of got combined. So I think all of this was happening before COVID, but COVID kind of opened up the door a lot more for us to feel comfortable talking about it. And I thought about with COVID, we were all kind of sitting in a place of being victims together. So maybe it was a space where we could commiserate a little bit more comfortably. So I don't want to say this wasn't happening before COVID. I just think COVID brought a lot of light to it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And, I have always said the whole old time slogan of leave your problems at the door when it comes to work. No one ever really did that. I'm big on attachment styles. We're bringing ourselves to work. So in times of stress, you're going to see the real me, that's been happening. So it's interesting that you say it's always been there most likely, but after COVID, now we feel like we can talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. There's a quote that they say Henry Ford said that all I wanted was their hands, but then the rest of them had to come to work. Right. And I think that for so long, for decades, I know when I first started in the workplace, it was you are employee first and then human. And now we're seeing that humanness, we cannot shake that out of us. We are coming as the whole people or unwhole people into the workplace.
Yeah. And the unwhole part
is what we're going to talk about. I felt when you said that, the Henry Ford statement, I could almost hear the head nods of all the HR managers in the world going, yeah, man, if they just not bring the rest of them, my job would be so easy.
Yes,
right?
us humans are so messy. And it's time we take a look at that and just no longer ignore it, because you know what's that statement? If you ignore it, it'll go away. No, if you ignore it, it will magnify. So we're going to put our humanness under a microphone, take a look at that messiness, because, you know, we can't manage what we can't label, and not label in a bad way. Just give it a bucket so we can start to explore it.
Yeah. And really look at, you know, if I am unsure what it is, then I definitely am not going to come up with a solution. So let's make sure that we're bringing a solution to the right problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember as a kid, I was so afraid of the monster under the bed. And then when I lifted up the covers and noticed, oh, you know what? That's not a monster. It's where the cat sleeps. So yeah, you're right. Once we uncover what it is, then I can start to kind of explore that and get to a solution. So I think that's really what's important about our conversation today. It's if there are people in the workplace that are suffering, they're interacting, Shanenn, on a daily basis with a martyr, a victim, or a jerk. And what if that jerk is their boss? There's a lot of energy that they're spending on trying to deal with that interaction that's being taken away from their own holistic good, their well-being, their family, their community. I mean, it just doesn't affect them in one way. It's so multidimensional.
Before we started recording, we were talking about, you know, me being a Libra, you're a Leo. So it was especially for Libras, like, oh man, personal and professional, if one of them are off balance for me, that's my whole, it's all off balance. Like, you know, I can see your point of people are spending a lot of energy when we need to be focused on other things. But if we are feeling uncomfortable at work, we're feeling like we're having a hard time getting along with the team member, certainly our supervisor, that causes a lot of stress. Like, am I going to lose my job because I'm not getting along with my supervisor well, or I'm not performing in the way that they think I should? So that's causing a lot of stress for people.
Yeah, a lot of stress. And that stress just takes such a toll. And some of the research that's coming out now is that, get this, we know about secondhand smoke, right? We know that secondhand smoke can cause a lot of harm. Did you know that there's such thing as secondhand stress? And what I mean by that, when we exhale cortisol, it affects the people around us and makes them anxious. That's what the research is showing. And I often ask folks, have you ever been in a room and you were just fine, and then a stressed person walks into that meeting and within a few minutes you find yourself getting anxious? Yeah, that's that exhaled cortisol from that stressed person. So when we are stressed at work and we go home, particularly if we have young ones at home, that's having an effect on those, you know, future adults. So that's why I take this message so incredibly seriously. We need to acknowledge what is causing us that stress. What's putting us into that, you know, fight or flight all day long. Now, our ancestors, when they went into fight or flight, like when they were running from a bear or a tiger, they went into a cave for 2 or 3 hours to reset their neurovegetative system. Guess what? We don't get the luxury of that. We go to the next stressful situation, and then the next, and the 95.
The next meeting, the next meeting, the next meeting.
We don't have that luxury.
Okay. So you've got my wheels spinning, because I'm envisioning a boardroom, a meeting room, and your, you know, example of somebody comes in who's stressed. This is my third meeting already of the day. Here comes her who, you know, we can feel it, we can sense it. Okay. How do we clean that cortisol air quality in a meeting room? If I'm the leader of that meeting, perhaps, how do I clean the air when I see that happening?
Yeah, and I think that would be a really great gift to have a team leader who's actually that aware to notice that environment as opposed to trying to rush through an agenda. So first of all, I'd have to give kudos if you are a team member, a project leader, or a manager out there, and you notice this with your group, please take a moment to check in with that awareness, see if something's there. And in that moment, it's okay to say, hey, you know what? Let's just take 1 minute. Let's just take a breather. 1 minute. I'll put 60 seconds, and I do this, Shanenn, with my meetings. I'll say, you know what, I'm going to put 60 seconds on my watch right here. Everyone just take some deep breaths. We're going to come back, and I'll meet you in the other end, the other side of this 60 seconds. And it kind of resets. And what I notice now is there's a breathing exercise that's from the SEAL team. It's called box breathing.
Yes, it's my favorite.
Oh, Shanenn, can you please explain to us what box breathing is?
Yes. So, box breathing, I always recommend this to my clients when they're, feeling anxious, feeling overwhelmed. As you said, their stress level is high. So if you envision a box, right, and breathing up one side of the box, holding it across the top, exhaling down the other side, and then you kind of have that pause at the bottom. At least that's the way I do it. I'm sure people can look online and get better instructions than that, but it's so good to do because you can just do it wherever you are and you can envision the box.
Yeah. And I find more corporate clients, organizations, teams incorporating box breathing, because I think it gets a lot of credibility when you say like the Navy SEALs do it.
Right.
And I have team managers, project leads that are starting their meetings both virtually and in person with 1 minute of box breathing. And it is so cool to hear back from them that on the other side of that, they get a better interaction with their team. What's really cool about the neuroscience behind that is that the research shows we are only 3 deep breaths away from our next emotional state.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that interesting? So if we rush into a meeting and we're in a highly fight or flight state, if we can just give ourselves 3 deep breaths or 1 minute of that box breathing before we walk into that meeting, we're walking in and showing up so differently than if we didn't do that. I do have clients that I coach that have started going into the bathroom stall before meetings, doing the breathing exercises, and they're showing up in these meetings. Get this, Shanenn, not reactive, but responsive. Deliberately managing how they're responding, not reacting from a fight or flight, I need to protect myself space, which is so powerful. If you think about it, we breathe while we're asleep. No one's telling us to breathe. It's kind of an invitation to be a little bit more conscious of this precious thing that keeps us alive.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Like if you are a manager and you're holding meetings with team members, take this. I would have loved this if I had someone who was running the meeting or my supervisor go, hey, I know everyone's been going meeting to meeting all day long. Here's your opportunity. Just sit for a second and catch your breath and literally catch your breath, right? And relax for a second before we start this meeting. I think how wonderful is that? Because truly people are so busy today. You are in back to back to back meetings all day long. And I hear that so often, like, I don't have time to do the work because I'm sitting in meetings all day.
Yeah, and we make up for it on our downtime, our weekends, and there's an opportunity cost with everything we do, right? So when we make a choice to accept every single meeting, and I'll tell you a tactic that's been really helpful for me and the teams I'm working with, and I did this at the beginning of the year with several teams, is take a look at all the recurring meetings you have in Outlook and really go through those and say, what is the value I bring to this? What do I get out of this? And start declaring, in the book I talk about boundaries. What meetings you attend, those are clear boundaries right there. When I went through my Microsoft Outlook list of all the meetings I've just accepted over the past about 18 months, I noticed about 30% of those no longer apply. The decision's been made or we moved on to a different phase. I don't need to be in that meeting. So I send a request to the meeting organizer and say, hey, I just want to see, is it critical that I'm in this? And 100% of those 30%, the organizer said, no, Jen, we're good. I just got 30% of my day back to start managing what really needs my attention.
I want to bring up something almost on the flip side because of your book, like in my, at a time where I might have been a martyr or a jerk, but I would think in the beginning, especially as I was really trying to climb the ladders, like I want to be in every meeting because that made it seem like it was important, or I was important to be in that meeting. So I'd love to get your take on that, and having the conversation of, just because you're not in the meeting doesn't, like, there are other ways that you can show that you are valuable without having to be in all those meetings. It's one mistake that I made that I wish I would have done differently, is to think that that was the only way to show my value. Is the more meetings I was in, the more valuable I must be, because people want you in the meeting. So there's that part of you too that's like this ego part, maybe, that's like, I want to be there, but it's really unhealthy.
Yeah. And it's so many moving parts with this. So I'm thinking about this statistic from Gallup, and Gallup did a poll. They wanted to really understand how most people in the workplace are promoted. And what they found was what the higher ups leadership see in meetings and presentations. So what they see in public plays a really big part on promotion. Now, how do we use that to our advantage? I say it's quality over quantity. Less meetings, more of a presence. And what I mean by that, I work with so many engineers who are introverts, right, by nature, and I get really concerned that they're not going to get the public recognition they deserve. So what I propose is less meetings, but if you're going to be in a meeting, I want you to ask the most profound, insightful question you can think of. Really think about it. And I think the greatest compliment in a meeting is when someone says, wow, it's a really good question. So I say less meetings and make your presence so recognizable and memorable. And I coach, quite a few of my clients on how do you show up even when you're quiet, even when you don't say something, having a presence that establishes that you've earned the right to be there. And again, it's quality, how you show up in meetings, over the quantity. And, I can just see when I was managing, when I was a manager, if I had an employee, a team member that showed up in every single meeting, my mind would say, when are you working?
Right.
So it's like, there's so many sides of this coin, right?
100%. And I love that of, quality over quantity, and really like showing up your best self in the meetings that are important for you to be in, that you do, that are necessary, that absolutely show where you can contribute. I think that's really important. Jennifer, it might have been the way my husband got me as well. That sort of mysterious, like, shows that, I'll see you when I see you kind of thing. I'm just kidding. He wasn't.
How mysterious.
Yeah. Mysterious. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. So like kind of mysterious, like, oh, okay. I think it could work in the workplace too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay. So we're going to go through our meetings though and say, which ones do I need to be in? Check with our supervisor, make sure they're cool with it. We're touching base to the meeting organizer and saying, hey, is it really necessary that I'm in these? Now we've gotten 30% of our time back.
Yeah. And you know what? This is a really interesting place to kind of put out there. This is where we can become martyrs and victims.
Tell me more.
This is where the martyr says, well, I attended 30 hours of meeting last week, so I stayed an extra 20 hours at night and over the weekend to get my work done. If you're working with someone, or if you are someone that's constantly campaigning about how much time you're putting in, you might be a martyr.
Yeah.
Yeah. So watch it there. I like to notice, how often are you campaigning how much you're suffering for your corporate cause? And if you do have, and this is just so big, and Shanenn, it's so important for our listeners to take this into consideration. If you are interacting in a meeting or just in the workplace with a martyr, a victim, or a jerk, please don't take their bait. The martyr wants you to acknowledge all their suffering. They like getting paid in recognition of their suffering. The victim, they love getting paid in pity. And the jerk, they love getting paid when you give them your emotional response. So I like to say, don't take the bait. Think about quicksand. Remember when we were kids and we learned what to do and what not to do if you walked into quicksand?
Right.
The number one cardinal rule of quicksand, don't fight it, because you're going to get in deeper. Same is true with our martyrs, victims, and jerks. Please, please, folks, don't take that bait. That is a major first step.
So what do we do if we are in situations on a project, on a team with a martyr victim or someone who is consistently a jerk? We don't want to take the bait, but we don't want to feel that stress of it. And we feel like we need to address it in some way. What do we do? How do we maneuver that?
Excellent. That is the first step, is awareness. Being aware of the fact of why you are getting triggered, why you are getting depleted after you work with this project team. So I think you just nailed it. The first step is awareness. And the next step is, what can I do about this? So, I mean, it changes, right? If this is your manager, you're going to have to manage up a little differently than with your peers.
Right.
So first step, awareness. The next step is, what is it that is triggering me? Is it a tone? Is it a word? Is it the fact that they're interrupting me? Is it the fact that when I speak, they talk over me? So I really want our listeners here to identify, what are the behaviors that are triggering me? Because if I can identify those behaviors, I can start practicing not getting triggered. You know, and some of our great leaders throughout history have done this. If you think about like the stands for nonviolence with Gandhi, with Martin Luther King Jr., before they sent their folks out on the front lines to protest with nonviolence, they made sure they could not be triggered by any word or action that someone else was throwing at them. You have to dig deep to respond, not react with triggers. So let me put this pamphlet together for us. First, we're going to be aware. Secondly, we're going to identify what triggers us. And then third, we're going to start being so committed to our boundaries and protecting our sacred habitat.
So I like that you said focus on the behaviors, because, you know, I just did an episode about feedback and giving feedback. And one of the things is like not attacking the person's character, but only addressing the behavior versus the person. Because if you come in and you're talking about like who I am, that type of thing, of course, as the person receiving that, now I'm triggered too. I'm going to be upset, and I'm probably not going to listen to your concern. So I like that you said the behavior and focusing on the behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I say martyrs, victims, and jerks, I'm talking about the behaviors that person is expressing. Yeah. And you just nailed it with feedback. Feedback is when we're the most sensitive, right? Mm-hmm. I think some of the most scary words we can hear is, do you have a minute so I can give you some feedback? Yes. Or we need to talk. I mean, there's some other trigger statements in there. And if you're triggered by these statements, we need to talk. Double click on that and ask yourself, why does that trigger me? And when I hear those words going forward, how am I going to deliberately manage how I'm going to show up when I hear the words, we need to talk? Mm-hmm. Because nobody can control our emotions but ourselves. And Eleanor Roosevelt said, you know what? Once someone makes you angry, they now have control over you. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm so committed to helping us identify our triggers and manage them.
Yeah. How do we then go, okay, I'm being triggered by this person or persons in the workplace? Like going through and saying, how do I identify my triggers and know what it is that's really bothering me about this person? Because there are some people, sorry to interrupt, but there are some people where you're just like, I don't know what it is, but I just can't with that person. Yeah. I can't figure it out. I don't know, but we just do not work well.
Yeah. And there's so many different things, right? What the research shows is that the three main areas of conflict, when we get into conflict in the workplace, come from three places. One is task. So we maybe have unclear expectations. I thought I was supposed to do the PowerPoint. I spent 8 hours on it. You thought you were supposed to do the PowerPoint. So there's a conflict right there that may trigger us. The next level is relationship. We don't really have a good relationship built on trust. so that we can get triggered right there. And then the third level is values. We deeply have different value systems. It's kind of like when my mom told me growing up, don't talk about politics or religion because that's the value system that can trigger us. So I like looking at people in the workplace as case studies. So let's just say there is Carl. And if I know I just don't enjoy working with Carl, what I start doing is I start keeping data points on Carl. When do I walk away from an interaction with Carl feeling depleted, angry, annoyed? And then I start saying, okay, so what am I experiencing with Carl that's bringing this up? So that's phase one right there. Data points. We love data. Data drives decisions. So I've got some data points and now I can start planning. Okay, so when Carl does this, how am I going to manage that trigger? Primary way we manage it is we don't allow our brains go into that reptilian fight or flight, right? Our neofrontal cortex, it's what, 250,000 years old? This is millions. So our body is built to protect us. Our brain hasn't caught up with the fact that we're pretty protected and wearing nice separates in the workplace, right? We're pretty safe, but we still keep going. Yeah, we're okay. But yet we still go to that place where I need to, promote my survival. Oh my gosh, Shanenn. I mean, I've seen in the civilized workplace, two people go at it so much that they needed to be separated.
Wow.
I mean, that is just, that's wild to me. So let's get back to Carl here, our case study with Carl. So I'm going to acknowledge and take data points. What is it about Carl that's triggering this in me? I'm going to investigate that. And then I'm going to develop a plan that says, okay, so I'm in charge of my emotions. I'm in charge of how I respond because I don't want to just react. Going forward, this is what I'm going to do. And then you create a plan and you start burning those neural pathways so that this starts to become autopilot. And there's a little acronym our team made up that I like to share. It's called—
I love a good acronym. I love
it. So it's called NCIS. Name it and claim it. I am angry. Investigate. Why am I angry? And then specify. All right, well, going forward, he is not allowed to have control of my emotional state. Now, NCIS, what's really cool about this, Shanenn, is when you name it, I am angry. The brain says, oh, I have a term. So now it's not the crazy unknown that I'm afraid of. So it gives you empowerment in the subconscious brain. I am angry. I am frustrated. I'm annoyed. So when you name it and claim it, your subconscious says, oh, I feel empowered. And then when you investigate it, why am I this way? Super cool about this. It starts taking you out of that reptilian brain because you need your executive lobe to think, right? You need logic. Yeah. So now you're investigating it and specify. Our brain says moving forward, which pulls us out of that emotion even more because we're forward thinking. So NCIS, and I've used this so many places in different industries around the world, and I still get feedback of how powerful it is.
Oh, yeah. Because again, if I know what the problem is, then I can work towards a solution. If I don't know what I'm experiencing, which that happens, people are like, I don't know what it is. And some of it could be because we're not asking the question. We're not really trying to figure it out. But if we don't know, then we're certainly not going to be able to solve it.
Yeah. And it's really, you just nailed something right there. I think it's really important. When I'm experiencing something and I can't name it, putting it out there to my brain saying, what is this? What is this? The brain loves questions. The brain, if you ask, like our brains are built, it's just so amazing, our operating system. If I ask the brain, what am I feeling? The brain is going to go out there and look for information to provide me. So I think it's incredibly powerful, Shanenn, what you just said. I'm experiencing a reaction to not go off and try and stay in energy or in motion because we're built that way, just to go, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? And allowing that to come to us. I think that takes such power. And I think that our true power is in how we respond deliberately. It's not in reacting. I mean, we see people reacting all the time, right? At the airport, we see people showing up their worst selves. We don't want to be them, right?
Yeah.
We want to be calm, kind of like Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry kind of calm, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's so good. I mean, like, chat GPT your own brain, right? Like ask your brain what's going on.
That is so cool. Shanenn, I really like that. Chat GPT your own brain.
Yeah.
And Shanenn, I just wanted to share with with our listeners here today that in the book, there are several assessments in there. And what's also in there is something super cool called the Perception Management Plan. And what the Perception Management Plan does is it allows you to create a system so you can deliberately manage how you're being perceived. And what I mean by that, when I work with clients around the world for the past 15 years doing this, I work with them and say, hey, what are 3 adjectives of how you want to be described? Intelligent, knowledgeable, approachable. All right, cool. Everything we do with your behavior is going to drive towards those 3 adjectives. That's your perception management plan. And then we create a system, and it's in the book. We create a system of how you can show up with those 3 words, particularly to bring it full circle in meetings. I want to be perceived as knowledgeable and competent in meetings. All right, what does that look like? How do you need to show up? So I just think it's really important for, the listeners to understand that there are systems out there. Are they easy? No. You know what? They're simple, yet not easy. For me, running is simple. It's just not easy. But the systems are absolutely out there. And the perception management model is one of the ones where I've seen the biggest shift in human behavior. And what's super cool is when someone starts putting that perception management system into place, redrawing their boundaries, retraining people how to treat them. And I get to see that over the course of minimum 90 days, then 6 months, and then a year. They're having a different experience on this planet. And it's just so awesome to know that we hold that power.
Yeah, I love that coming up with the 3 things, because that kind of gives people a lighthouse, so to speak, of bring it back to this. And even if stuff is not going the way that you want, or someone is, you're really struggling in that relationship, well, these are the things that are important to me, more important than being right in this conversation or letting them affect me, right? I assume that's the idea.
Oh, you know what, Shanenn, you just nailed something that one of my mentors told me. Jennifer, connect. Don't try to convince. Connect first, because you will never convince or persuade someone if you don't have a connection with them. And I think that's good. So, connect, or you can't convince.
Ooh, I love it. Yeah. Well, we will have the link to that assessment, in the show notes. And also the link to your book. I think it's amazing. I think everybody needs this book, and you've laid out many things that will be valuable to the person in the workplace. So thank you for that. I always ask my guests to give us a power move that we can do this week based on the topic. So if you were to say, hey, this is the thing, go out and try this week based on what we talked about today. This is your power move to go out and practice and try this week. What's the power move?
You know what, Shanenn, my power move, my invitation to everyone is awareness. Please, your power move is to start acknowledging what's not working for you, what's triggering you. If you could just start writing down, documenting what is triggering you, that is something we can start to now manage. And think about your life in 6 months or a year from now. If those people, those martyrs, victims, and jerks no longer have that control over our emotional state, that starting point is with awareness.
So good. Thank you for all of the information you've given us today. You may have called some people out. That's okay. And, again, going back to the behaviors, just because you have this behavior doesn't mean that you're a bad person, or more importantly, that you can't change those behaviors. So I think, this book will help us to both learn how to deal with them and how to make those changes for ourselves.
Yeah, it means you're human, right? We're all
Yeah.
human. And Shanenn, when as you noticed in the book, half the stories were about me. When I showed up as a martyr, I was a very good martyr, a victim, and I was the biggest jerk. Yeah. So if you are a martyr, victim, or jerk, it just means you're human.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Shanenn, thanks for the invitation and getting the message out there.
Thanks for tuning in to Lead Without Limits and investing in what matters, you. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with a friend or colleague who might benefit as well. This podcast is brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, your trusted source for stories, trends, and insights in multifamily living. I hope this moved you one step closer to lead without fear, lead without doubt, and lead without limits.